don't want it. But here it is, America. You're about to get it. Nikki Haley says she's out. Even Dean Phillips says he's done. We officially have the rematch. The 45th president of the United States versus the 46th. Donald Trump versus Joe Biden for the next 244 days. Come on in. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. All right, here we are, and in general election mode, here we go. Hanging out today with us, Chris Steigerwald, host of The Hill Sunday and senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, NewsNation political editor as well. Kelly Meyer, NewsNation Washington correspondent. Mark Lauder, former special assistant to former President Trump. Johanna Mosca is a NewsNation contributor and former Obama official. And joining us remotely, Mick Mulvaney, former Trump White House chief of staff, NewsNation contributor as well.
I like the vibe.
Joining us from the Conch Republic, you can see down there in Key West. Hello to you all. Nice to have you in on this day after Super Tuesday. 244 days, Chris, until November 5th. What comes next?
Mick's so bummed out he's trying to get to Cuba. He's going to swim for it. Look, the reality that snaps into the frame once you get into the general election. So there's a hypothetical election and that partisans are mostly focused on, or hardcore partisans are mostly focused on. Then you get into the general election, and then the persuadable voters who have mostly been, I guess here's the best way to think about it. The people who matter most in this election, the persuadable voters, have been trying to avoid this topic for 2 years. And it's going to increasingly be put right under their snouts, and they're going to, for the next 244 days, they're going to get just drilled with it, and I bet they're not going to be happy.
Right into your living room. Mick Mulvaney, what comes next year as you see it, as now it's essentially one-on-one?
A lot of what you saw in 2020. Actually, you're going to see Donald Trump try and do a lot of what he did in 2020 because he still thinks that he won. I'll be watching Biden very closely. Keep in mind, in 2020, he had the perfect excuse to not campaign very heavily. People did not expect him to campaign. It was okay to stay in your basement and campaign from there. That's not the case anymore. So we've not seen Biden really campaign since, goodness gracious, what, Chris, 2016? I think he was in that race for a brief period of time. So he's really the unknown here. What does Joe Biden bring to the table? We all know what Donald Trump's got. It's going to be the Rolling Stones' greatest hits. If you've seen him before, you've seen it already. But the Biden thing is really going to be an unknown, I think, moving forward.
All right, speaking of Biden, you're out on the trail. Kelly, you're over at the White House. What's the campaign saying now?
Yeah, I mean, we're hearing from them that they want to see now Haley's supporters come over. They're saying, hey, come on over to us if you don't want to support former President Trump. So they're hoping to bring them in. We'll see if he can do that maybe with his State of the Union address. We're also seeing this back and forth now between Trump and Biden going on social media and the Trump campaign, the Biden campaign on whether or not they're going to debate each other. That going on. The Biden team responding, saying if Trump is so desperate to see Biden in prime time, he can join the tens of millions of Americans and watch the State of the Union address. So, but we'll see if the enthusiasm, comes around for Biden. He's going to have to build that because at the end of the day, from being on the campaign trail, Trump supporters, if people aren't enthused to come out for Biden and, like what you were saying, they don't want to see a rerun.
What you hearing in Trump world?
They can't wait. This election has one thing in it that 2020 didn't have. Joe Biden has a record, and the American people do not like it. It's 50, 60, 65% disapprove on every major issue. 2/3 of the American people think the country's on the wrong track. Joe Biden was hypothetical and could hide in his basement in 2020. He can't hide from his record.
But there's an enthusiasm gap with Trump.
There is. And this is what I'm looking at the numbers, and look, we're operatives. So we look at it a little differently than Chris, and I'm diving into North Carolina. And this election, we've got Trump at 790, Haley around 250,000, Biden around 606,000. So we've got 606,000 people showing up for Biden. In 2012, where it was the same, it was a reelect, we had 766,000 plus 200,000 showing up for not uncommitted. So we had more people showing up then. if we look at 2020, that's 1.3 million people. So if we look at the Democratic turnout alone compared to these, we're down about 250,000, even if you add in the Haley voters with us compared to some of our enthusiasm elections. But I will say in Colorado, Trump is also down 100,000 votes. He's got 522,000 in his primary. And last time around, let me look. Oh, yeah. Last time around was 628,000. So it's about 100,000 gap.
Which you would say?
I don't know. That's many numbers. There are many numbers that are there.
People don't want these candidates. They're not showing up.
I would only say to be careful about drawing inferences from primary turnout into general election turnout. We've seen high turnout generally in the primary so far, to a surprising degree on the Republican side. But the 2020 election, the 2018 and 2020 elections were historically large turnout.
Okay.
2022 dropped off. I think Democrats win a lower turnout election.
Okay. All right. Meantime, there are roughly, give or take, 340 million Americans or so in this country, and only 4 out of 340 million won either a state or a territory this primary season. The 46th president of the United States, the 45th president of the United States, a former governor, and Jason Palmer. Who, you might ask? These were the results from the caucus in American Samoa. Now, President Biden lost the Democratic caucus there by 11 votes last night. 51-40, that was the total. But that officially gave Palmer, who hadn't been on any political radars whatsoever, the win. So who is he? A 52-year-old businessman from Baltimore, Maryland, who campaigned in American Samoa remotely. And Jason Palmer joins us here on the Hill live. Thank you for being with us. Appreciate the time. I think this obviously got some headlines last night. Why'd you do what you did, and what was the thinking?
Well, I've been running since November, and even though the media hasn't really recognized that I've been out here, it's because we need to run a positive, optimistic campaign about the future. If the Democratic Party is going to win in November, you were just talking about Joe Biden can't campaign from his basement. I agree with that, and in fact, that's why I've been out there campaigning, talking about conscious capitalism, talking about bringing back the American dream by helping with lots of upskilling programs and re-engineering our financial aid system, not to invest in traditional colleges, but to invest in these shorter course certificate programs that can upskill people to new collar jobs. Like, there's a whole vision and 25 policy positions on my website that I think are very important that the Democratic Party adopt as many of them as possible. My positions on Gaza and immigration are much closer to the core of the Democratic Party if we're going to win in November. And the American
if you're going to win,
people,
you mentioned if Democrats are going to win in November, obviously, Jason, you know it's not going to be you there at the convention. I wonder, are you going to go to the convention?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I am a Democrat. We have won 3 delegates. We're not done. We're still campaigning. We want to do the best we possibly can in Hawaii, in Northern Marianas, in Arizona. I'm not dropping out of the race, but I'm also realistic. I mean, I invest in companies that have a 1% chance of success, and I know I probably have a 0.1% chance of success at this point. But I would love to see Joe Biden be like George Washington and say, you know what? I have done a great job as president. I've had 50 years of great public service. I'm going to now step aside and let people like Gretchen Whitmer or Jared Polis or Gavin Newsom. Yes.
Yeah. Anyone from the DNC congratulate you today?
I have received so many calls and emails and texts. I haven't been able to go through all of them, to be honest with you. But I tell you, I've noticed that people who are closer to Biden inner core have been telling me for many months, please don't run, please end your campaign, you're hurting Joe Biden, which is really strange to me because Pete Buttigieg didn't hurt Joe Biden last time. He actually made Joe Biden stronger. Kamala Harris didn't hurt Joe Biden. She ended up becoming the VP. You need to have robust competition and campaigning in order to win. And, you know, if I'm the only one out here now that Dean Phillips has dropped out, I'm keeping at it because we got to get young people and independents energized if we want to win in November.
Jason Palmer, thank you for the time. We got to leave it there. Fascinating to see what you did. And You grabbed some headlines last night, so thanks for being with us here on The Hill the day after. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right. Yep. Meantime, lots of questions about the strength or lack thereof for Donald Trump and Joe Biden after we start now the general election. But how about these two questions? For President Biden, in Minnesota last night, 19% of Democrats voted uncommitted. In North Carolina, 13% voted no preference, while in Massachusetts, 9%, Colorado, 8%. So that's Biden. For Trump, the suburbs are the worrying sign. In the key areas of North Carolina and Virginia, Trump's margins were much tighter than his overall performance. All right, let's take this one by one. Mulvaney, Donald Trump's suburbs. Republicans got to worry about that? Republicans have to worry about what they saw last night?
Sure. I mean, that's his weakness. There's no question. That would cost him in 2020. I mean, I was head of the Catholics for Trump in 2020, spent all my time in the suburbs in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Minnesota, and Wisconsin, and we got killed in the suburbs. You're seeing that trend again. Now, he did win the suburbs of Charlotte, North Carolina, including those where I live. I actually live just south of the state line. And it's still Trump country, but 52-48, he wants to do much better than that in the suburbs. North Carolina is a state that I don't think is a swing state, but because it doesn't have as many suburban voters as Virginia did. I think Steyerwalt went into that last night on the Super Tuesday special. So North Carolina is not as much at risk, but he'd like to do a lot better in the suburbs than he is.
A lot are shaking his head here.
No, I agree. North Carolina is not a swing state.
Oh, I thought you were going to disagree with Nick. That's what I thought you were.
We will certainly have a competitive gubernatorial, which will motivate some of the Democrats. Going back to what Jason Palmer was saying, he's not wrong that us not having a competitive primary is driving people to stay home. And even in that case, he won 51 votes. The total vote total was 91 in American Samoa.
All right.
Last time it was 400.
What about President Biden? Uncommitted, Johanna. 19% Minnesota, 9% Massachusetts, 13% North Carolina, 8% Colorado.
The Palestinian activists have been very effective at messaging. More effective, I would argue, than the Haley communications team, because last time around, we had 200,000 people in North Carolina vote for uncommitted against President Obama. So it's not actually that big of a number.
How big is this a problem? How big?
I think in North Carolina, we do have everything Mick said is right, but there is that candidate choice, and Johanna alludes to this. The Republicans have a real Lulu for their gubernatorial candidate down there. It's a former pastor, and the Democrats waited until the day after he had locked it to come out with the tape of him saying that he didn't think women should vote. And so that gives you a taste of how that race is going to be. So sometimes you do have down ballot that splurps up to the top. North Carolina is going to be a competitive state. However, how wide the margin, it was the closest state that Trump won last time. Trump, if he does very well in North Carolina, will win it by 1.5 points instead of 0.5 point. Okay. But that would be, 30,000 votes. That would be a lot. For Biden, Trump helped him out enormously with the protest vote because as soon as he took the stage, what did he say? We want the Israelis to finish the job. Finish the job. So anybody in Minnesota who was like, well, I might not vote for Biden because he's too tough on Hamas, Donald Trump was like, don't worry, I got it.
By the way, you know what tomorrow will be? 243 more days of this between Trump.
You're bumming me out, man. You got to have some better vibes.
I'm not trying to give off bad vibes. I'm just
can we commit that when the American Samoa delegate gets on the convention floor and says, we cast our 3 delegates, you'll carry it live.
All right, coming up here on The Hill, Donald Trump has absolutely trashed electric vehicles. No one has been more successful at making electric vehicles than Elon Musk. The 45th president and the second wealthiest man in the world reportedly met over the weekend to be a fly on the wall for that one. So what do you think that gathering was all about? That's coming up. Plus Steyerwalt breaking down the number one issue.
Oh, we're going to talk about the border. We're going to talk about how, as it turns out, we've been talking about Hispanic voters wrong frequently, and we're going to rectify that a little bit.
Steyerwalt breaks it down. Other side of the break. You're watching The Hill here on NewsNation. Stay with us.
Tired of late-night politics?
Excuse me, if I just want to laugh, just a little.
Stay up all evening with Antenna TV and enjoy your favorite classic sitcoms. Designing Women.
You're kidding! Oh, be still my heart.
Becker.
Check out the Hippocratic Oath. It doesn't mention nice.
Wings.
I'm laughing already.
Classic comedy all day, all night on
Antenna TV.
For decades, I've taught you everything I know.
8 decades for the U.S. Forest Service's symbol for wildfire prevention.
But I can only teach wildfire prevention.
And 2024 signifies the 80th anniversary of Smokey Bear and his iconic message.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
A long-form social media video is now available to honor Smokey, entitled Decades. Produced by longtime collaborators, the U.S. Forest Service, National Association of State Foresters, and the Ad Council, the video also features the new voice of Smokey, actor Brian Tyree Henry. The media is among various recognitions of Smokey's 80 years of service this year. More about the history and legacy of Smokey Bear is also found online at www.smokeybear.com. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
This is The Making of America from the Jefferson Media Group. He was born in an obscure section of Chicago on the 5th of December in 1901, but he would live a life that would change the whole world for the better. He holds the record for the number of Oscar nominations, as well as the number of Oscar awards won by any single individual. He built a multi-billion-dollar empire that stretches around the world, and he did so on the shoulders of a tiny little mouse named Mickey. Walter Elias Disney built the best of both worlds. He became fabulously wealthy, and he did so by making people happy. This has been The Making of America. I'm Michael Emerson, and you can visit us at jeffersonmediagroup.com.
With more than 5,000 journalists working in newsrooms coast to coast, this is NewsNation, America's fastest-growing cable news network.
There are days where we all wonder if it really pays to be kind. We suffer indignities and become annoyed with other people. When that happens, we have two choices, to be angry and bitter or another option. Dr. Gary Probst here will share a thought in just a moment.
David was in big trouble with the IRS.
At first, I didn't owe that much, but after this year, it was out of control.
Then David called Get a Tax Lawyer.
Right away, they were like, oh yeah, looks like you're qualified to save.
Get a Tax Lawyer went to work.
Should have called way sooner.
Get a Tax Lawyer has helped thousands like David fight the IRS and get a fresh start.
Call 800-783-0798. That's 800-783-0798.
No act of kindness, no matter how small, is ever wasted. That's not a new concept. The quote is from Aesop, and he died in 564 BC. There's been great unkindness since his time, but we tend to remember the atrocities and the improper behavior of other human beings. What we don't focus on is the small acts of kindness around us every day. If we allow ourselves to only see the negative, we develop negative beliefs. We overthink it until we feel hopeless and depressed. We become anxious and allow frustration to control us. Well, here's the antidote. Do something kind for somebody today. You may not feel like it, but it will change your outlook. Sure, there are bad things in this world, awful things, but you don't have to let it make you unhappy. Be positive, change your life.
All right, welcome back here to the Hill on NewsNation. So it has been at least 5 straight days now that we are hearing that at least 7,000 migrants per day have been crossing at the southern border. We know that immigration, the southern border, has suddenly become the #1 issue across this country in the general election. So what happens next from here? And specifically, when you look at that border, some Pew Research numbers out, we're starting to get a better look at how the Hispanic community is looking at all this. Steyerwalt, Here to break it all down, Chris.
You know, we hear both parties talk about Hispanic voters this and Hispanic voters that, and it's mostly a bunch of poppycock. Treating Hispanic voters as monolithic is a mistake, and there are Hispanic voters in these United States who have been in this country, whose families have been in this country for 5 or 6 generations. There are Hispanic voters in this country who are from all different countries around the Spanish-speaking world. So anyway, get ready for a big fat harumph. Okay, let's look at our first poll. This is from a high-quality, a delectable new Pew Research Center poll. Border situation is a crisis or a major problem. Why, look at there. Hispanic voters feel exactly, from a statistical standpoint, exactly the same as non-Hispanic Americans. Why, my goodness, you might imagine that they have considerations and concerns other than just immigration. So look at the next one. Government is doing a bad job at the border. Non-Hispanic, 81%, Hispanic, 74%. That's easily explained by the fact that Hispanics, based on where they live, tend to be more Democratic than the population as a whole. So even within that space, that's still pretty harshly negative view. Okay. What do they think we ought to do? What do Hispanic voters in America think we ought to do? Is it better if we make it easier for asylum seekers to work legally? Much higher support for that among Hispanic Americans, as opposed to this last one. Is it better to increase deportations? No. And that's pretty obvious. So when we think about Hispanic voters in these United States, we think about how this goes, we have to stop thinking about these voters in monolithic terms. And I don't know that we have the graphic for it, but I did the research. While I was on the train today coming back from New York, I did the research. In California, the percent which has 24% of its population, of its electorate was Hispanic, they went for Biden by 40 points. But you compare it to Texas, where the Hispanic population went by Biden for 25 points, compared to Florida, where they went for Biden by 9 points. New York, 42, Arizona, 19 points. What's the takeaway? What does it mean? It matters more where you live. It matters more what you earn. It matters more what your family's considerations and concerns are, whether or not your last name is Gutierrez or Jones. And when we talk about this stuff, and when the parties talk about this stuff, we just have to remember to try to treat Americans like Americans and not work so hard to silo people into these demographic categories. Hurrah.
Well said. Steyerwalt breaks it down. Kelly, so this is going to be immigration going to be a big theme, I would think, tomorrow night at the State of the Union. What are we expecting?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he has to address it. He just made that visit to the border last Thursday. We were at the White House and asked about, whether there was going to be some executive action. He said he still needs Congress to act, but that's a question around the State of the Union. Will he be announcing some sort of order he might take, any action he might do? They haven't previewed that from the White House at all. They're just saying they're going to, take a look at what they've done and how they can build off of that, but certainly something that we think he will address.
What does it say that they haven't announced anything, tipped their hand yet?
Malpractice by the White House. I mean, this is the number one issue in Virginia, the number one issue to the voters in Iowa, New Hampshire, and pretty much everywhere we've already had voting. The exit polls show that immigration is the number one issue.
For Republicans.
In GOP primaries, yes. But
yeah.
And I would tell you that it was great. The economy's not doing much better for Joe Biden either. But this is a huge issue. They're ignoring it at their own peril and blaming Congress when Joe Biden took 94 executive actions in the first 100 days to undo what we had done. He owns this.
Okay. All right. Programming note, by the way, for tomorrow, NewsNation will have special live coverage of the State of the Union. All starts 8 o'clock Eastern, special edition of Cuomo and after the speech, as you see there. Tune in for a special late edition of The Hill. That is tomorrow night, right here on NewsNation. We hope you watch it with us.
Look at the size of that noggin. My gosh.
Meantime, breaking news. The verdict is in the Rust movie trial. Guilty verdict, we are being told. Armor Hannah Gutierrez-Reed was charged with involuntary manslaughter in the death of the cinematographer Helena Hutchins. Hutchins was fatally shot on the Santa Fe, New Mexico movie set, as you might know. The actor Alex Baldwin is also charged of involuntary manslaughter and is set to stand trial in July. You can watch full coverage of that verdict tonight on NewsNation in primetime, starting after The Hill here on NewsNation. All right, still much more to come here from The Hill. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. now talking up the possibility of running as a Libertarian, which would essentially get him full ballot access.
I love dealing with libertarians. I love speaking with them.
I thought that was the question of the night from our guy Steyerwalt. So, does the Libertarian Party want RFK Jr.? On the other side of the break, we will ask that very question to the chair of the Libertarian National Committee. Stay with us. You're watching The Hill here on NewsNation.
His karate lessons might not turn him into a black belt. Hi-ya! And even after band camp, he might not be the greatest musician. But with the 3% annual percentage yield you can earn on a PenFed premium online savings account, your goal of supporting his dreams...
Thanks for everything, Mom and Dad.
...will always be worth it. Apply today at PenFed.org/savings. Federally insured by NCUA. $5 minimum to open account. To receive any advertised product, you must become a member of PenFed.
PenFed's got great rates for everyone.
For some children, a single surgery can turn an untreated cleft into a smile for life. But at Smile Train, we understand that most children need a little extra care. They need medical, dental, and emotional resources to grow healthy and strong, to express themselves clearly, and to navigate all of life's challenges so that their smiles light up the room as brightly as possible. Visit SmileTrain.org to learn how Smile Train is supporting the cleft community with lifelong smiles.
This message is from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. Veterans, do you have a copy of your DD-214? A DD-214 is a DoD certificate of retirement, separation, or discharge from active duty. It verifies your eligibility for benefits and services. The fastest way to request a copy is through the National Archives and Records Administration at archives.gov. Get the benefits you've earned.
At First Tee, we are building game changers. We believe all kids deserve to feel excited to grow, safe to fail, and better equipped for whatever comes at them next. We do this by helping them develop their golf swing, but more importantly, their inner strength. First Tee coaches help young people ages 7 to 18 navigate the course, as well as guide them through new challenges in life. Because we know what's inside doesn't just count, it changes the game. Learn more at firsttee.org.
There's danger out there. It lurks on highways and quiet neighborhood streets. It's more likely to kill you than a shark, and more terrifying than the biggest snake. Distracted driving claims lives every day. Every notification, swipe, social post, video, or selfie while driving risks your life. So while you might think public speaking or the zombie apocalypse is scary, what's really terrifying and even deadly is distracted driving. Eyes forward. Don't drive distracted. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
You're listening to The Hill on NewsNation. To find NewsNation on your screen, go to joinnn.com.
Life is full of moments, including difficult and disruptive ones like a cancer diagnosis, which is why the groundbreaking work of Stand Up to Cancer is so vital. They bring together top minds from different fields to find new and better treatments so patients can thrive. Please join Stand Up to Cancer and Myrtle Beach to help families get back to where they belong, making new memories for years to come. Go to standuptocancer.org to see how you can join the mission.
Are you prepared for an emergency or disaster? Because it's not a matter of if, but when. Don't find yourself saying,
I'll trust water bottles and a flashlight to save the day, but I'll be proved wrong.
With a tornado approaching, I'll realize that I lack a wheelchair-accessible shelter.
When the floodwaters rise, I'll be up in the attic with 20 cans of beans. It's a recipe for disaster.
Let's prepare so we all have a better story to tell. Get started at ready.gov/older adults. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Retirement can be scary, but only if you're not prepared. That's why AARP created thisispretirement.org. Because unless you've already retired, you're in pretirement, and you still have time to plan. Learn about retirement savings options, potential tax breaks, and how you can build savings over time. Visit thisispretirement.org for free resources to help you customize your action plan and feel the retirement fear disappear. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
What will we do, baby?
Do you sense a theme here? Your favorite sitcoms from the 80s and 90s are all in one place. Rewind TV. Just go to rewindtv.com and check it out.
I need to file my tax return right the first time. How can I be sure to do that?
Doing your taxes yourself? Using e-file is the best way to file an accurate tax return.
Mistakes can delay your refund, so spend an extra few minutes making sure you can file an accurate return the first time around. Avoid common errors by spelling all names correctly and using correct Social Security numbers. Double-check your bank account numbers for direct deposit and double-check your math, too. Oh yeah, don't forget to sign and date your return.
All right, welcome back to The Hill here on NewsNation. So with all the focus on Trump and Biden, keep in mind that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is polling, depending on what poll you look at on any given day, somewhere around 9 to 15%. But here's his problem. He needs ballot access. So could he run as a libertarian, potentially giving him access to all 50 states? He sounded warm to the idea on NewsNation last night.
I love dealing with libertarians. I love speaking with them, but we'll see if there's a future for me with that party. We will get ballot access with or without libertarians.
All right, Mick, Mark, Johanna, obviously one of the questions looking forward. What happens if he's on the ballot in all 50 states? Mick, how worried are you from a Republican perspective if that indeed happens?
First of all, the last thing he said is just verifiably false. This is his only chance to get on the ballot. He has waited too long to get on the ballot. It's this or nothing. So Robert F. Kennedy does not. I think he's on the ballot right now in Utah. From a Republican versus Democrat perspective, I'll be curious to hear what Johanna has to say. I think the Democrats are a lot more concerned about this. The polling I've seen shows that he polls probably 2-1 from Democrats over Republicans. So this is a much bigger Joe Biden problem than it is a Donald Trump problem.
This is why we are very worried, Mick. You are absolutely right. That's why depressed primary turnout is a flag for us, because people are not showing up for Joe Biden. And there are a number of Democrats who could go third party. A third party race, a third party candidate, a viable option could very well mean a second term President Trump.
Yeah, no, this is all about the swing states. I mean, you literally have 43,000 votes in 3 states decided in 2020, and you add a third party that can draw 9 to 15%. You've now put all of those states in play and probably put a few more in.
Yeah.
Taking exception to anything from there?
So on partisan affiliation and the family name, Kennedy has some problems for Democrats. But on vibes, it's all on the Trump side, right? Kennedy's a disruptor. He is that famous. He is outsider. He is old. He is for boomer nostalgia. If you want to make America great again, RFK Jr. lines up there very well. And if he's running as a libertarian, then he is going to be running to the right instead of running to the left.
And it's interesting, sorry, if I could add, that voters I talked to, especially in South Carolina, that were Republican for Trump, they also said that they liked RFK Jr., so maybe if people don't want Trump, they might go for RFK.
All right, so will the Libertarian Party nominate RFK Jr. as its candidate in late May? That's when the convention happens here in Washington. Might know someone who has that answer. Joining us now is the chair of the Libertarian National Committee, Angela McCardle. Angela, thanks for being with us here on the Hill. Appreciate the time. So are you actively recruiting RFK Jr. right now?
I'm not allowed to actively recruit anyone for the presidential nomination. I'm certainly friendly with his campaign, just like I am with all the other candidates' campaigns, though.
What'd you make of his comments last night?
You mean about being open to seeking our nomination? I mean, I think that's the wise thing to do. Anybody who is an independent and is liberty-minded or perceives themselves to be liberty-minded should be looking at our ballot access. Not only do we have ballot access in a majority of states, and we intend to reclaim it at 50 states again in 2024, but we have the experience and the ground game to do it. It's taken decades of institutional memory and learning and practice to get it done. And so, of course, I'm sure we're appealing right now.
Would you consider him the favorite at this point in time?
No, I don't think that we have any favorites right now. And that's not a knock against him. We have a very ornery group of delegates. They're very interested in finding the best, most principled messenger, someone who represents us ideologically. And we also have a group of people who are very focused on ballot access. And of course, having Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as our candidate would absolutely seal ballot access for us. But it's not decided yet.
Right. So He's a Kennedy, obviously. Democratic name, Democratic, obviously the legendary Democratic name. Here's what he told Elizabeth Vargas during the town hall with NewsNation in the middle of last year. I'll get your reaction on the other side.
My plan is to win this election, and I don't have a plan B.
Okay.
He said he didn't have a plan B, and clearly he does, because he left the Democratic Party. Do you worry at all that he could potentially simply just use the Libertarian Party for the ballot access?
I mean, define worry and define use. I think that if he became our nominee, there would be an understanding with us that he doesn't 100% represent us ideologically. He is getting ballot access by using our name and branding. And in return, we are securing ballot access for the future. And, whether or not it's for better or worse, we would also be potentially unlocking some federal funding. So it's really, if that happens, it's going to have to be a conscious decision of the delegates and a mutually beneficial relationship.
Ms. McCardle, it's Chris Steyerwalt, and I just wanted to quickly ask you. I asked Mr. Kennedy last night about the fact that he is a person who spent most of his career prior to this as an advocate for regulation, right? He was somebody who was looking for, especially on environmental issues, looking for more regulation, more government intervention. He had an answer last night where he tried to square the circle by saying that he favors market solutions for dealing with environmental problems. You're not supposed to be giving advice to anybody who's seeking your party's nomination, I know, but can you talk a little bit about the tension, if there's tension there, between the Libertarian electorate, as it were, and Kennedy's track record?
Sure. Well, I'll say I give advice to all of them. I just can't be playing favorites. And, the talk that he gave at Freedom Fest, which is one of the biggest libertarian gatherings in the country in July, was really good. And he talked about free market solutions to environmental issues. And it seems as though he's had a sincere awakening on this issue. And if he has, I absolutely applaud that. I want to hear free market solutions to problems that people are concerned about. I think that he, along with a lot of other people, had some pretty significant paradigm shifts over the last few years. People really saw the government response to COVID, with it being lockdowns and mandates, and started questioning a lot of their other beliefs as well. And I think that that's probably something that happened with him when it comes to regulatory frameworks or schemes.
All right. Angela McCardle, we appreciate the time, and we hope you come on back here on the Hill. Your convention at the end of May, and we'll talk to you before then. Angela, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Mick, Johanna, Mark, we'll go around real quick. I'll start with you, Mick. What'd you hear there, and what'd you take away?
Money. They stand to get a lot of federal money if he qualifies and brings in a higher total than they would get otherwise. And I think that that would be important to me if I was running the Libertarian Party.
What'd you hear there, Lauder?
Data. He needs their access, and they want to use him to get as many emails, phone numbers, and dollars as they can.
I just love the honesty of the Libertarian Party by just being like, we're using each other, so it's all good. It's, a little refreshing, I guess, sometimes in politics.
Is that what's going on here?
I mean, look, the Libertarian Party's gone through a little bit of an identity crisis in the past decade and trying to figure out what it is and trying to appeal to a new, younger generation. And I actually buy her answer to a certain degree. I mean, it's spin, obviously, but it's not bad spin. And I do buy the disruptor argument, right? They're disruptors. He's a disruptor. And everybody does the things that you guys are describing, right? Donald Trump does it, and the Biden campaign does it, and it's politics.
All right, coming up here, still on the Hill. Elon Musk loves his electric vehicles, obviously. Donald Trump has been trashing electric vehicles, and over the weekend, the two reportedly met. Why? What do you think they were talking about? What could possibly come from it? And how about this for a curveball? A Republican in California actually has a shot at winning a Senate seat. Is that the case? It's a familiar name. The legend, Steve Garvey, Dodgers legend. The win he had last night and the challenges he faces going forward. Plus, buckle up no matter where you live. The general election is essentially set. 2024, here we are. You're watching The Hill here on News Nation. Stay with us.
Adulthood. That's why vaccines matter so much. For 40 years, Rotary and partners have delivered vaccines globally. Like here and even here, in your neighborhood and around the world, Rotary is ensuring children grow up safe from preventable diseases.
My name is DeMar Hamlin. I play for the Buffalo Bills, and I play safety. CPR saved my life. I've teamed up with the American Heart Association as a national ambassador to help create a nation of lifesavers, turning bystanders into lifesavers through CPR education and access to AEDs. Nearly 3 out of 4 cardiac arrests that don't happen in hospitals happen in homes. Join me to ensure everyone has the chance to live longer, healthier lives. Visit heart.org/nation.
That's my son Jared, but the world knew him as recording artist Juice WRLD. At the height of his fame, we lost him to an accidental drug overdose. I'm Carmela Wallace. I started Live Free 999 to remove the stigma and normalize conversations around mental health and substance abuse. I want to ensure that we never lose another Jared.
Go to livefree999.org to learn more. If you need urgent support, text LF999 to 741-741.
Are you prepared for an emergency or disaster? Because it's not a matter of if, but when. Don't find yourself saying,
I'll trust water bottles and a flashlight to save the day, but I'll be proved wrong.
With a tornado approaching, I'll realize that I like a wheelchair-accessible shelter.
When the floodwaters rise, I'll be up in the attic with 20 cans of beans. It's a recipe for disaster.
Let's prepare so we all have a better story to tell. Get started at ready.gov/older adults. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
This man is a pathological liar. Donald Trump is a serial philanderer.
Tonight, in nominating Judge Gorsuch, President Trump has honored that commitment. He's kept his word.
There is no way we are going to allow a con artist to take over the conservative movement, and Donald Trump is a con artist.
Donald Trump is committed to cut taxes, curb spending, and get our national debt under control.
Brutal,
okay.
Brutal, Blake
Might
Bowman,
that
brutal.
have happened in reverse? Check out this headline from the New York Times. Quote, Trump seeking cash infusion meets with Elon Musk. Here's why I bring it up. Lauder, Trump has been trashing electric vehicles. That's just his belief. It's his belief. So be it. And then he meets with the second wealthiest man in the world, who is the best EV maker. What's the thinking there? What's going on? Is he changing his tune?
I don't think he's changing his tune on electric vehicles, but he also owns X, or formerly Twitter. He owns SpaceX, which has a lot of important NASA contracts, and he's the second richest guy in the world who could cut a Zuckerberg-sized check, not to a candidate, but to a PAC or to some other organization that could fulfill the America First mission.
Mick, you've been in these meetings before with Trump and Musk. What do you make of it? Because he's been going after EVs non-stop. And when I saw that headline, I thought, wait a minute, is he now actually trying to make things all good with someone else?
Listen, I don't know what they talked about today. I can assure you of this. There was no written agenda for this meeting. Period. End of story. We talk about two people who can talk about literally anything. I think I've sat in on 2 or 3 of these things, and it's just like watching the circus. It was fascinating. Of course, Elon Musk, one of the very brightest people you're ever going to meet, but the dude is strange. There's no question about it. He did put out something on X this afternoon saying he was not going to give any money to a political candidate. As Mark points out, this is not about money to candidates. This is about money to PACs. So that door seems like it might be open.
So here's the post. Just to be super clear, I am not donating money to either candidate for U.S. President Elon Musk today. The key word there, Chris, is candidate.
Candidate. And he could certainly get around that. You know, I'm reminded of when Trump, do you remember when he came and let Bud Light out of MAGA jail?
Oh, God.
Yeah, like a few weeks ago.
And he said that Bud Light had paid for its transgressions for having the transgender.
There was a fundraiser involved, right?
Yeah. And so the thing that, and Mick can speak to this from his experience too, there is a very transactional nature to the way Donald Trump does this stuff, right? Like, I want to see it. I want it in my hand. And Musk, I'm sure, wants Trump to stop trashing electric cars, but he also would like Trump, I'm sure, to get back on Twitter and give up on the Truth Social experiment.
Well, I have the regrettable experience of setting up an event where President Obama had to walk with Elon Musk years ago with SpaceX. And I remember, he was actually very
Why is it regrettable?
It was regrettable because now the things he says on X, which he bought with Saudi money, it's outrageous. I mean, he tells women that they need to have more babies, and then he says that immigrants shouldn't be coming to this country. He is an immigrant. It's so bizarre. I mean, honestly, I think there's some nuance to that argument, though. Half the time he's smoking pot, he's talking about it. He is.
We don't know.
He says he is, right? And so there's just, a lot of questionable activities, and the U.S. taxpayers subsidized his companies. So I do believe it is regrettable.
Tesla, obviously tax credits, SpaceX, government contracts.
I was just going to add that he later tweeted, "Politics is tribal rather than logical." He tweeted after.
That's what Musk tweeted?
It's just all logic. Yeah. He's just pure, he's Spock.
Ones and zeros.
All right, coming up here on the Hill, the governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, is deploying the National Guard, not to the southern border, but to the subway system in New York City, the National Guard. So how bad is it right now in the Big Apple? Leland Vittert, host of On Balance, joins us after the break. The panel's still here, sticking around. You're with us here on the Hill. We'll see you in a few.
NewsNation tomorrow, a crucial night for President Biden. With his presidency on the line, can he make his case to the American people? Cuomo and the best political team anywhere break it all down. The State of the Union, special live coverage tomorrow on NewsNation.
And Alexa.
All right, welcome back here to the Hill. So the New York governor, Kathy Hochul, is tackling the crime plaguing the Big Apple's subway system. Get this, she is now deploying 1,000 members of state police and the National Guard to patrol the platforms and assist with checking bags following a series of violent incidents.
These brazen, heinous attacks on our subway system will not be tolerated. Anyone looking to do harm or spread fear on our subways, you will be caught. Plain and simple.
New York City subway crime is down, though, more than 15% this time compared to last year. Mark, what's going on here?
She's trying to tackle the crime problem, or a perception of crime. I mean, it's dominating the local news. I was up in New York last night with Super Tuesday coverage, and one of the drivers that was taking me back to my hotel heard me doing a radio interview, realized obviously I was with a certain political perspective, and which I worried about. But then he's like, looked around, made sure no one could hear. It was just us in the car. And he said, I'm voting for your guy. I can't stand it. I live in New Jersey. It won't make a difference. I know that. But me and my family, I'm sick of it. What's going on?
Is that where this is going?
I do wonder about her relationship with Eric Adams. I mean, Eric Adams is a questionable...
He wasn't there today, right?
Well,
at the press conference?
I didn't see him. And that's the thing is Eric Adams, I think a lot of Democrats have questioned some of his campaign finance, some of his choices when he wanted his brother to do his security. And I think that they don't have the best relationship. So I wonder if it isn't actually a play to take over.
Leland Vittert, host of On Balance, come on in, up in New York City today. I don't know if you were in the subways recently. Or
I was.
What you saw. Okay, what'd you see?
I did not see any of the National Guard. Maybe that's just because of what subway stations I happen to be in, or the police. Look, I'm old enough, and I think, Blake, you and I covered this together when sending the National Guard into cities to stop crime, maybe to stop riots, was a national affront and a terrible thing to do and a threat to democracy. So I think it's kind of interesting that they're willing to deal with the optics of this. Number one, the fact that Eric Adams has been put in this position and Kathy Hochul has been put in this position is interesting. Number two, what we're going to try to tackle is how do you put this genie back in the bottle? What really has to happen on the streets, not only of New York, but of Philadelphia, Chicago, Washington, D.C., in order to stop this crime wave? And we can talk about the statistics. What I would submit is that it's more about a feeling, right? And you and I have covered this a lot. That the feeling in America and how people perceive things, maybe even how Lauder's driver perceives things, is very different sometimes than what the statistics are.
What do you got coming up tonight on Balance in a few minutes?
All right, we're talking about that. Obviously, talking about the election, and then I don't know, Blake. You were an athlete in college. Were you part of a union?
Sorta.
Were you good enough to be in a union?
I wasn't good enough, period. But no, I wasn't in a union.
By the way, neither are the kids at Dartmouth who play basketball. They're 6-21. They're in last place in the Ivy League, and they just voted to unionize.
Yeah, big story. That could potentially shape college athletics. We'll see.
Yeah.
Future of the NCAA, the big story. Anyways, all right, cool. Leland Vitter, host of On Balance, coming up in a few minutes' time. Catch you then,
brother. At your service.
Yep. All right. Well, from the East Coast now, we head out west, where California's November Senate race is set. The Republican in California, Steve Garvey, will face off against the Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff, largely thanks to the effort of Schiff's campaign to try to boost Garvey's profile. He also has huge name recognition, obviously. In the end, Schiff's campaign spent more than $12 million on ads contrasting him against Garvey, and it seemed to work. Chris, California, what's the state of play there?
This is what This is what national Democrats and Adam Schiff wanted in a quadrennial election. The margins for the Democratic presidential nominee will be so astonishingly large that it would be. I won't say that it's impossible that Steve Garvey could win a Senate seat, but I would put the probability so low as to be, in the low single digits.
Okay.
Wow.
This is bad news. There is a lead lining to the cloud for Democrats, though, which is if there isn't a hot race on the ballot, right? So that if Katie Porter, who just collapsed, Katie Porter, I cannot explain how poorly she did. The Californian perhaps knows. But there are a bunch of competitive House races in California, and having a hot race at the top of the ticket would have been good for Democrats to get people out. Republicans may pick up Porter's district, may pick up a couple of other
Dodgers legend Steve Garvey. What's going on in your home state?
Well, he's very good at baseball, and when you watch the debates, you know that he played baseball. But I agree with Chris, the odds are very slim that he's going to actually end up representing the great state of California. On Katie Porter, a lot of Democrats were very angry at her because she announced early that she was going to run for this seat and give up a seat that we spent a fortune to maintain. And she gave it up to now the person who's coming in behind her has a DUI. So we've got some issues on our side, and Democrats really left Katie Porter for it.
Okay. Meantime, one of the world's leading universities in hot water again with Congress. The Republican leader of the House Education Committee is calling Harvard's response to anti-Semitism subpoenas, quote, useless. Virginia Fox added, quote, I don't know if it's arrogance, ineptness, or indifference that's guiding Harvard. Regardless, its actions to date are shameful. Now, the subpoena was issued last month because the university failed to provide sufficient documentation into its anti-Semitism investigation. Mulvaney, Harvard grad. Come on in one last time.
That's the worst stone since you played that video of Rubio. That's mean.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Is Harvard grad mean now? I don't know.
It just says he went to school outside of Cambridge.
Look, we talked about this in the show 8 weeks ago, that these folks were coming back, that the first hearings were so influential and so dominated the media that we knew Harvard was coming back. So here they are. I do not know, Blake. I have no idea if the documents that Harvard gave, and Harvard did give a bunch of documents to the committee, but they were heavily redacted. I don't know if that satisfies the requirement of the subpoena. Here's what I know. I do not want to be on Virginia Fox's bad list. I'm telling you, they have no idea who they're going up against. This woman will rip their throats out in this committee.
All right, Mick, enjoy Key West. Thanks for hanging out with us. Fun show, everyone. Mick, we'll talk to you soon. See you in person.
See you at the big show?
Yeah. See you at the big show. Tomorrow night. State of the Union coverage. We'll be back here tomorrow at 6 o'clock.